If you're watching this video, you must want to learn about what makes a great user experience, as well as how to deliver one. Well, I've been studying this topic for the past month, and today I want to share with you what I have learned to get you in the mindset of a design thinker, apply the tools that a design thinker uses, and as well as to give my personal insights working as a UXer. Hi, I'm Luca, and I'm a semester away from graduating in computer science from the University of Calgary, and currently I'm on a 16-month internship with IBM as a user experience developer. This video today is part of an online class I'm doing, and the class is an open-ended one which allowed me to explore anything I wanted. So, seeing as I'm putting so much effort into it, I thought I might as well share it to you and to others who might benefit from this. Before we get in the video, I want to make sure your expectations are not to become a pro after watching this. Rather, treat it as a roadmap where I lay down all the checkpoints and give you the bigger picture of what a user experience design might look like. You also don't need to be artistic or be a sculptor or painter or possess any of the finer arts. Don't get me wrong, those things do help, but there is a reason we distinguish UI and UX within the industry. And this brings me to point number one, which is just because something looks good does not mean the experience of people using it is just as good. I mean, look at this photo of a cat mug. Are there any obvious problems that stand out with you? Well, I don't know what the designer was thinking when they created this, but maybe it's actually an ingenious invention. Maybe it's meant for people who have built up a large tolerance with coffee to wake them up instantly. Or maybe it's just meant for people to put it on a shelf and be an eye candy. Who knows? And that is point number two. Do not make judgments without understanding your audience. To understand your audience, you must empathize with them. And that is where design thinking comes in. The whole philosophy is based on empathizing with people. And that is what makes it so special. Design thinking is a creative problem-solving technique. What that means is it is best used when the problem is not well defined. Meaning, if somebody comes up and hands you a finished product or wants something very specific, then design thinking would be the best choice. But more often than not, I think design thinking is the majority of the cases.
Hello, Luca.
Hi!
Hi. We need to put out some files into a web page for our business department.
Okay. I might have some ideas for that.
I like Google Drives there, but I'm gonna try combine it with OneDrive, Dropbox, and add a bazooka on top.
Hey, snap out of it. We need that by end of today, okay? Nothing fancy, nothing advanced. End of today. You got it? Let's go.
Yeah.
Typical front-end designers.
Once you stop assuming you know what the customer's needs are, or when you put aside your ego thinking you know what is best, then we can get into the real UX. Which brings me to point number three. Be lazy. Now, the first tool to help you be a lazy investigator is something called a design brief. A design brief is a document detailing the who, what, when, and why of the thing being developed. This document is divided into 3 sections and then is further divided into 3 subsections which are individually addressed in the document. What makes this document special though is that everyone from management to designer participate and answer all these questions individually, and someone will come merge them together to create one unified document, bringing everyone's perspective to the table. Now, the design brief might seem insignificant, seeing that it requires so much time to be invested into it. But according to research, while a design brief takes up 5% of the total development time, it is responsible for the 70% of the finished product, and it is very well recommended you spend a lot of time with you and your teammates. Now, you have to be the one to motivate people to do this document. And this brings me to point number 4, which is to be a good salesman. You're going to need it. So I volunteered to redesign my church's webpage, and I gave the same reasoning I gave you right now to why we would need a design brief. But it's been a week now and I have no submissions yet on that document. One even replied saying that that was just too much work. Another project I'm also working on at work is an app that synchronizes all the fitness data from different apps in order to rank them and then have like an internal competition at work. I also have not heard anything from there. So the point of the story is, if you're going to do a design brief, make sure you're getting paid for it. That way, people are accountable. Now we need personas. And personas are used by designers as a user-centric reference tool to showcase the ideal user. They have to be well researched and not rely on stereotypes. You typically start out with 2 types of personas. The buyer, the people who actually buy the product, but not necessarily the ones who actually end up using the product. And we also have the anti-persona, which illustrate the users who are not the intended audience. This is just the starting point. It is best to have between 5 and 10 personas, but it all depends on the project, as every project is unique. You can create the personas in 4 easy steps. Step 1 is to identify a group of people to research on. Step 2 is to collect data through ethnographic research and interviews.
In the sun and the wind and the rain, I climbed into the hills. This was where I was meant to be.
Step 3 is to consolidate and cluster all the group insights based on common interest. And the 4th and final step is to examine the notes as well as the various clusters and to merge them into distinct personas. It is time for point number 5, which is find the pain points. Officially, pain points are specific aspects of the user experience that results in reduced value or benefit to the user. So, now that you have understood your users deeply through an intense ethnographic research, it is time to create a user experience map. Now is the time to get back into your dream of becoming a Hollywood star and act out those personas. Because unless you get in role and act out those personas, how else are you going to know what their pain points are? So maybe you don't really need to act it out in real life, but it really helps if you visualize these personas in your head and go through their experience as authentically as you can, and to document the journey and identify the pain points along the way. So, point number 5. Ideate. Now that you have identified the pain points of our personas, we can begin to innovate and figure out how to resolve their issues. Speaking personally, this is my favorite step because this is where I get to be the most creative. You can just brainstorm them on the sticky notes with other people, cluster them, and then figure out if those are good solutions. Alright, and point number 6 now is to put it all in perspective. It is time to create a story based on what we have gathered so far. You should be aware of the problem from your user research, as well as the possible solutions from your ideation. You have to connect these two to create a story which will look like something like this. Every man knows how hard it is to be insert problem. Wouldn't it be wonderful if insert solution? You create multiple stories from personas based on their pain points, and you would share these stories with focus groups or other people to get their feedback. You might be wondering, why is story such a important medium? I also had my concerns too, because I'm not the best storyteller, but stories are very important. It is the tool that connects to your audience directly, not only to the potential customers, but to the manager, to the development team, to everyone involved. Plus, you also get smaller testable elements from the story, such as how many have this need? What is the context that leads up to the problem? What are the emotional and practical aspects of making this decision? What kind of practical problems do these people who have this problem face? I found this aspect actually pretty interesting because you know who else spoke in stories? God himself. So maybe it's not coincidence that stories remain to be one of the most effective ways to convey and to connect to an audience. So don't underestimate stories, because we will need it for our next point, which is point number 7, prototyping. Answer set of questions, test assumptions, demonstrate how. A prototype is a creation used to answer questions, test assumptions, and also to showcase how something works or could work. It does not necessarily have to be something physically tangible. It could very well be a video demo or an animation. The key here is to allow for an interaction with an experience without the major investment of creating a full-fledged product. 2 quotes that I found inspiring for creating prototypes are, fail early to succeed, or the sooner you have a working prototype, the faster you will have a successful final product. And the second quote, which is that no battle plan survives contact with the enemy, which is to say that upon creating a prototype and observing it in action, we will discover some inherent flaws in the way we thought, which is to say that upon contact with enemy or contact with our customer, our prototype will fail and we will be able to fill in those gaps. So the story is essential for the prototype. The story is the battle plan, and the prototype is the battle plan in action. One cannot exist with the other, because the story puts the prototype in context and gives it meaning. For example, the cat mug. The cat mug, maybe it was not meant to be as a drinking vessel. Maybe it was just a decoration to put it behind a glass wall. We don't know that. But putting everything in context is what the story does. But if we have no prototype and we have a good story, then we are unable to experience that good story. So what's the point of having a good story if we're unable to experience it or connect with it on a different level? Okay, the 8th and the final point is to reiterate. Accept the fact that you won't be able to get it right on the first try. In fact, you might come up with a better idea later down the road. And that is okay. You should even be reflecting at each step of the way to see what you have learned, what new things you can apply. So make sure to reflect at each step, and also once everything is complete, you can go through the steps again to add new things to those steps and find out new customer insights. You know, frequently we see finished results of great artist works or great web pages, but we actually don't know how many trial and error there was to get to that point. And it's very easy to fall in that temptation to start comparing ourselves to others on, hey, they got it on the 2nd try or 3rd try, but very important to just focus on ourselves. and reiterate. Most of these ideas were based on a textbook called Design Thinking by Michael Lukes, Scott Swan, and Abby Griffin. I think it was a good read. It did take a bit of time as it was pretty academically dense, but maybe if you want to learn these things, my suggestion would be to just take up a project and use the tools I listed here in the steps, apply those tools, and through practice and reiteration, you will improve on these. The tools we talked about here were talked about broadly, so you'll have to go out and research more individually on how other people apply these tools. You can take this a step further and do the IBM Enterprise Design Thinking Practitioner course for free online. It's a 2-hour course, and Enterprise Design Thinking is built on top of design thinking. It is just focused on the enterprise setting. You get to learn these things which I said, but less about the tools, more about the context on how you apply these tools. It's definitely worth the 2 hours and will definitely enhance your understanding of user experience design. And thank you all for sticking it through for so long. I hope this was as educational for you as it was for me, because I learned quite a bit even after I took down notes from reading these materials. Just going through them back again really refreshed all the things I had learned. So comment, like, subscribe. Thank you.